Sometimes the world around us is stranger than fiction. If you're ready for more bizarre and fascinating facts, stick around, because I'm Mike with List 25, and here are oddly interesting facts that'll make you wonder. Wearing a beanie in winter always helps with fighting the cold, but if you thought it was because most of the body's heat escapes through your head, well, you'd be dead wrong. This myth is widespread, dating back to the 70s when it was a core part of US Army training to keep soldiers alive. More than that, though, it feels like it's true, probably because the face and head are some of the most sensitive parts of the body to changes in temperature. Next time you're feeling cold, try to cover as much of your body as possible. With a nice scarf. In the hills of Meghalaya, India, people don't build bridges, they grow them. The Khasi and Jaintia tribes have perfected this method for centuries, using the roots of ficus trees to form bridges across rivers. These Jianqing Dri bridges are guided by bamboo scaffolding, and over time the roots grow strong enough to handle heavy monsoons and last for hundreds of years. Besides helping people cross rivers, these living bridges also protect the environment by preventing soil erosion and absorbing carbon dioxide. They're a great example of how humans can work with nature, something modern cities could learn a lot from. First up on our list are dwarf giraffes. And trust me when I say these guys are a true anomaly in the animal kingdom. We've only found 2 so far. They suffer from skeletal dysplasia, which gives them incredibly short legs compared to their long necks. The first documented case, Gimli, was found in Uganda. Standing at just 9 feet 4 inches tall, he's about half the height of regular giraffes. Nigel, the second case, was later discovered in Namibia. Both seem to thrive despite their shorter stature, but scientists continue to study the effects of the skeletal dysplasia on their overall mobility and health. Ever wondered how old our planet is? By looking closely at rocks, scientists can get a pretty good idea of how long Earth has been around. Using a technique called radiometric dating, scientists analyze radioactive elements because they break down in a consistent way over long periods of time. In particular, looking at how isotopes have decayed gives a precise age to geological material on our planet. Through this process, the closest estimate currently is between 4.2 and 4.54 billion years. The most enduring part of Thanksgiving is that it comes from an act of peace between the Pilgrims and the Wampanoag people, who in 1621 had a 3-day feast to overcome their differences. But many view it as a way of covering up European crimes. The real story is that indigenous peoples all across what is now the United States fought back against colonization despite being heavily outgunned. There were intermittent raids, attacks, and wars, all of which only intensified after the Thanksgiving of 1621. In February 1996, NASA and the Italian Space Agency teamed up for a bold experiment, using a 12.4-mile-long tether to generate electricity in space. The plan was to drag the tether through Earth's magnetic field to create a current that could power the shuttle. Everything was on track as the tether deployed and the current steadily increased. However, right before the mission was completed, the tether suddenly snapped. The investigation found that tiny pinholes in the insulation allowed air to escape, creating plasma that short-circuited the tether and caused it to melt. The satellite payload drifted away, and the mission came to an abrupt end. The natural world is full of diversity, but some variations, like the gynandromorph butterfly, are extremely rare. These butterflies occur in a mere 0.01% of butterfly populations and have both male and female chromosomes. The effect is a beautifully intricate pattern on their wings that's more than just eye-catching, it's a scientist's dream come true. Apart from great photo opportunities, researchers can gain insights into how genes manipulate the transformation from caterpillar to butterfly, and how it determines gender along the way. Being around for billions of years doesn't mean that it's immune to change. We're currently experiencing that in the form of man-made climate change. The hottest decade on record was the most recent one, between 2011 and 2020. This is not the first time the climate has risen in temperature significantly. However, the link to greenhouse gas emissions, most of all carbon dioxide and methane, has never been stronger. These gases become trapped in our atmosphere, preventing heat from the sun from traveling back into space. Burning fossil fuels, deforestation, and the farming of livestock are the main producers of these emissions. Long before GPS, iPhones, or even traditional compasses, humans used the North Star to guide them. By looking up into the sky, it appeared so bright and constant that it would often be the best indicator of which direction to head. But it's not actually the brightest in the sky. According to astronomers, it only barely makes the top 50 brightest stars. Instead, the main reason for its popularity is how easy it is to find and the fact that it lies right on due north, perfect for navigating. On Pingalap Atoll, a tiny island in the Pacific, about 10% of the population is completely colorblind. These islanders have a rare condition called achromatopsia, which means they only see the world in black, white, and gray. This goes back to 1775 when a typhoon devastated the island. One of the survivors, the island's king, carried the gene for this condition, which spread as the community rebuilt. While achromatopsia is extremely rare worldwide, on Pingalap it's just part of everyday life. Though the condition comes with struggles like sensitivity to bright light, the locals have adapted. Some even use their enhanced night vision to catch fish by firelight. If you want to see something beautiful, you should Google desert rose crystals. These crystals are created through a process known as diffusion-limited aggregation, which basically means they form in quartz sand. The process creates beautiful mineral rosettes composed of selenite and barite. Interestingly, desert rose crystals can vary greatly in size, with the largest ever found measuring 43 centimeters or 17 inches in diameter. Where's the most dangerous place to be on the planet? The middle of the ocean, or the top of Mount Everest? Well, they're both strong candidates, but the Ring of Fire isn't much better. It's a huge area spanning 25,000 miles, encompassing much of the Pacific Ocean between Japan and New Zealand on the west and North America on the east. It gets its name from how dangerous it is, based on the explosive activity happening deep beneath the Earth's surface. Here, tectonic plates, which are gigantic pieces of Earth's crust, slam against one another, generating earthquakes and volcanic activities. In fact, 3/4 of the world's volcanoes are located in the Ring of Fire, along with 9 out of every 10 earthquakes. I don't know about you, but growing up I was always told that swallowing gum was bad for your health, and the most popular reason for this was that it would sit in your stomach for 7 years. The number is so specific that you wouldn't question it, but it's completely wrong. Most foods pass through your system in approximately 1 day after most of it's broken down by special enzymes. If you swallow a huge amount of gum, or consistently do it, then there's a chance of your intestines getting obstructed, but this is incredibly rare. In 1993, Harry and Nicola Fuller were found murdered in their Sussex home. Nicola had been shot 3 times, and Harry once in the back. Stephen Young, not the quarterback, was convicted of the double murder. But the case took a strange turn when it came out that the jurors had used an Ouija board during their deliberations. Apparently, they even spoke to one of the victims. According to them, the spirit told them that Stephen Young did it, even providing details about the crime. The seance ended with the spirit instructing the jurors to vote guilty tomorrow, which they did. When this unusual event came to light, the Court of Appeal overturned the conviction, which makes sense, right? Young had his new trial and was found guilty again, this time without any ghostly interference. Every now and again, nature delivers a wonky egg. While they might seem bad or off in some way, there's actually a very reasonable explanation behind them. In young hens, the culprit is an immature shell gland. This can lead to imbalances during calcium carbonate deposition, affecting the shell's final form. The good news is that these irregularities are temporary and vanish as the hen ages. In older hens, wonky eggs are a result of stress. The good news here is that wonky eggs are safe for human consumption and their unique shape doesn't affect their nutritional value. But we should probably spare a thought for the stressed, or very young, hen behind it. What do you think of when you hear of a place called Death Valley? Well, it's not a surprise that it's a hostile place, actually one of the harshest on Earth because of its blistering heat. Located where Nevada and California meet, the highest ever recorded temperature here was a whopping 130 degrees Fahrenheit in 1913. The temperature of the ground has been even higher, reaching 201 degrees in 1972. That's just 11 degrees under boiling. If you're a man looking to grow a thicker beard, then you might have been told to shave it more regularly. According to the theory, the hair then grows back faster and thicker. Unfortunately, this just isn't the case, and we have the science to prove it. The first study to prove the myth wrong was published in 1928, nearly a century ago. When hair does grow back, sometimes it looks a little different, often darker, which may be why the myth has been so persistent. Nope. The Amazon rainforest spans over 2.3 million square miles and is home to millions of species of birds, plants, insects, and other life forms. Indigenous communities have lived here for generations, relying on the land for their survival. But in recent years, criminals have increasingly taken over parts of the rainforest, selling land illegally for activities like drug production, illegal logging, wildlife trafficking, and mining. It's become one of the most dangerous places in the world for those trying to protect it. In fact, 39 defenders of the Amazon were killed in 2022 alone. A particularly tragic case involved British journalist Dom Phillips and Brazilian indigenous expert Bruno Pereira. While working on a book about conservation in 2022, the two were murdered after a reporting trip to the Amazon, highlighting the ever-present dangers for anyone who stands against illegal activities in the region. Calling all beach detectives, have you ever stumbled upon a strange leathery pouch while combing the shoreline? It might just be a mermaid's purse. Well, not exactly a purse filled with pearls, but a skate egg case. These intriguing casings hold baby skates waiting to hatch. However, keep in mind that the sun and wind aren't kind to those underwater treasures. Once washed ashore, they tend to shrink, darken, and curl up, so don't be surprised if they look a bit different from their fresh from the sea state. On the shores of Northern Ireland, a geological anomaly can be found. As a result of fierce volcanic forces millions of years ago, basalt columns were created. These are created when lava hardens and cools, forming pieces of rock that stick up above the surface in, columns. But the unique thing about the Giant's Causeway in Northern Ireland is the hexagonal shape of the columns, which lock together like puzzle pieces. Since 1986, the site has been a UNESCO World Heritage Site, attracting over 1 million tourists every year. Gaelic mythology describes the columns being formed as a battleground for a fight between giants. While science can't back this up, there is no doubting the near mystical quality of the place. If you go to a bullfighting ring, you will see the color red everywhere. Most famously, matadors used red capes to provoke bulls into charging at them before pulling the cloth away at the last moment. The color comes from a mistaken belief that bulls are attracted and enraged by the color red. In reality, they can't even see it. Instead, it's simply the movement, the whipping, and the taunting that ignites the animal's fight or flight response. I mean, wouldn't you charge at someone provoking you in front of thousands of people? What if a simple blood test could show how well your body is aging? Scientists have developed a way to measure how well your body is aging using a proteomic aging clock. This method looks at specific proteins in your blood to estimate your biological age. Not just how many years you've lived, but how your body's holding up. The blood clock has been tested on large populations in the UK, China, and Finland, showing remarkably accurate results. It can even help predict the risk of diseases like diabetes and heart disease, giving doctors an early heads up. By tracking how your body is aging from the inside, this tool could eventually lead to better health insights and even help lower the risk of early death. Opals are cherished for their unique range of colors and have been used in jewelry for thousands of years. Their variations are caused by the accumulation of hydrated silica spheres that scatter light. Nearly all of them produce varying rainbows of color. However, fire opals are the rare exception. These beauties only scatter red because of the way light interacts with their internal structure. While generally more expensive than, say, amethysts or cubic zirconias, opals, particularly high-quality specimens with exceptional color or brilliance, can command a hefty price tag and are very popular among jewelers. Electricity doesn't only come in the forms of batteries and powering our computer. It's also created from above in the clouds where ice and moisture combine to create static electricity during a storm. This generates a negative charge in the lower part of the cloud, while the top gains a positive charge. Eventually, this process ionizes the air and turns it into a conductor of electrical current. When the amount of electrical charge becomes too powerful to contain, lightning is produced, shooting down to Earth at 270,000 miles an hour. Electricity shooting out of the sky is pretty terrifying, but what about the magnetic poles suddenly flipping? Don't go anywhere to find out what'll happen after the imminent magnetic field shift. Sometimes science gets things very wrong, and takes a long time to update. Some recent medical textbooks still teach students that there are different zones of the tongue for different tastes, but it's been a while since that theory was debunked. Our tongue isn't segmented into different parts for sweet, salty, sour, and bitter. More or less, every part of the tongue can sense all of these. except the sides are slightly more sensitive. We've all had that moment, hearing your voice on a recording for the first time and cringing. I haven't. It's even worse when others are around and suddenly you start doubting everything. Is that really how I sound? Am I that annoying? It's enough to make anyone self-conscious. But here's the thing. You're the only one hearing your voice like that. When you speak, you're not hearing your voice the way others do. That's because the sound reaches your ears in two ways, through the air and by vibrating through your skull. This combination distorts what you hear, making it sound different from what everyone else hears. If you want to get a clearer sense of your actual voice without a recording, try covering your ears and speaking. It isolates the sound and gives you a better idea of how you really sound, cringe or not. I sound exactly the same. When I watch these videos back, I hear what I hear. I don't know. I'm just different, I guess. I hear me. I'm sorry. Okonite is a rare mineral that can be found in volcanic rock cavities. Unlike other flashier gemstones, Okonite comes in the form of delicate, almost cotton-like clusters of white crystals, and its scarcity determines its price. Starting around $55 US, depending on size, shape, and quality, the sky is basically the limit. In addition to its physical properties, Okonite holds an important place in spiritual beliefs, and it's said to promote spiritual development, emotional balance, and even improve intuition. Forests are known as the Earth's lungs. However, our oceans are actually more important for our atmosphere. The majority of our planet's oxygen comes from marine plants known as phytoplankton. They take in sunlight, combine it with carbon dioxide, and produce oxygen. It's estimated that somewhere between 50 and 85% of Earth's oxygen comes from these tiny microalgae. For comparison, all the trees and rainforests combined produce about 28%. Space is a vacuum, meaning that there isn't any sound. Watching astronauts float around in movies or in real life at the International Space Station, you'd be forgiven for thinking that there isn't gravity out there either. That's not the case though. Gravity is generated by the mass of objects, which creates a gravitational pull, which is why the moon stays close to the Earth, or why you can jump up and down without floating off into space. That means that throughout space, there is gravity. It's just that if you move further away from objects, its effect is weaker. A newly installed panic alarm system at Appalachia High School in Georgia was put to the test during a recent school shooting, and it likely saved lives. Just a week after being set up, the system was triggered as soon as the incident began. Teachers pressed a button on their ID badges, instantly alerting law enforcement. Officers arrived within minutes, stopping the shooter before things got worse. This system, developed by Sewage, sends the exact location of the emergency to the police and automatically locks down the school, helping everyone take cover. It's already being seen as a major step forward in school safety, and many are hoping it'll be used in more schools across the country to help prevent future tragedies. One of the most coveted rare collectibles out there is William Shakespeare's signature. Only 6 exist that we know of, and they're all on legal documents. Given their scarcity and Shakespeare's legacy, they've become extremely valuable, to say the least. In 2006, one sold at auction for an incredible £4.6 million. So while it might be cool to show your friends a piece of history, this is definitely a collector's item reserved for a very select few. You would have to dig for a long time to make it to the center of the planet. After getting through the crust, which has an average depth of about 10 miles, you would hit the mantle, over 1,800 miles thick. This makes up about 84% of Earth's volume. This massive area means that the mantle jumps from one extreme to another, depending on the location. Areas closer to the crust hover around 1,800 degrees, while those closer to the core surpass 6,600 degrees. That's about 3 times the temperature of lava. This is where the tectonic plates of the Earth are located, which move around because of the molten fluids that they sit atop, also inside the mantle. What do you do in the middle of an intense lightning storm? Well, if you're Benjamin Franklin in 1752, say, the answer is to walk outside with a kite, of course. This was supposedly in the name of science. Attached to the kite by a wet hemp string, the small metallic object could draw static electricity from the air. This experiment is often thought of as a milestone in the scientific understanding of electricity. However, if he had successfully attracted a lightning strike, the founding father probably would have died. The success that he refers to in correspondence with a friend was probably from an ambient electrical charge, which would have been felt through the metal key. But Benjamin Franklin's involvement wasn't agreed upon, and there was a number of scientists in Europe carrying out the same experiment at the time. Autoimmune diseases like celiac disease and multiple sclerosis occur when the immune system mistakenly targets the body's own cells. These conditions currently have no cure, and with research suggesting COVID-19 may increase the risk of autoimmune disorders, the need for effective treatments has become even more urgent. This is where inverse vaccines come into play. Unlike traditional vaccines that stimulate the immune system to fight off infections, inverse vaccines are designed to retrain the immune system to stop attacking the body's own proteins. Although still in the early research stages, inverse vaccines are showing great potential and could provide new hope for millions of people. While we're on the subject of rare collectibles, the T206 Honus Wagner baseball card is probably the most valuable sports card in existence, and it comes with a fascinating, if dubious, backstory. According to the rumor, baseball legend Honus Wagner objected to his image being used on a cigarette insert card, as he believed it would encourage children to smoke. This disagreement apparently led to the card's removal from circulation, which created a scarcity that continues to drive its astronomical price tag to this day. In fact, the last one was sold for $7.25 million in August 2022 in a private transaction. You probably grew up learning that there were two poles of the Earth. The South Pole on one end and the North Pole on the other, where Santa lives. Okay, I'm kidding about that last part, but did you know there's another pole other than the North and the South? Covering a land of snow, glaciers, and rivers, the Tibetan Plateau is thought of as our planet's third pole. That's because of how crucial it is in the climate all over the world. The plateau spans across 10 countries, has an average elevation of 14,000 feet, and is home to the two tallest mountains on the planet, K2 and Mount Everest. The water here trickles down to the 10 longest rivers. The ice sheets and glaciers directly impact temperatures around the globe. However, they're melting at an alarming rate, and it's only getting quicker with global warming. There is nothing as special as a bond between a mother and child. That's why you should be suspicious of the idea that mother birds abandon their chicks if you touch them. To debunk it even further, birds don't even have a good sense of smell. So it won't make any difference if you touch a chick in the wild, but that doesn't mean you should. It can interfere with their environment, and usually, even if they're found away from their nest, they aren't in need of help. They're fledglings, still in the process of learning how to fly. The animal kingdom is full of strange survival strategies, but the sea cucumber might take the prize for the weirdest. When threatened, it defends itself by shooting out sticky, gunky noodles from its rear end. These noodles are actually the sea cucumber's internal organs, called Cuvierian organs, and they're surprisingly effective. These stringy innards tangle up predators, and they're made of protein similar to spider silk, making them super sticky and hard to escape. In some cases, this odd defense can even kill the attacker. Payura chilensis, also known as pyre, will not win any beauty contests, but don't let its appearance fool you. They're a type of animal called tunicates, also known as sea squirts, and they provide vital support to the ecosystem. Pyres have an interesting reproductive system. Born male, it develops into a hermaphrodite with both male and female organs, allowing it to reproduce independently if necessary. And if you're truly adventurous, pyre is a prized Chilean delicacy that can be eaten raw, cooked, or dried. If you can stomach it, its flavor is said to be remarkably similar to sea urchin. Or iodine. You know, tasty. Speaking of the poles, the magnetic field of the Earth is set to reverse. Believe it or not, this is actually more common than you might have thought. Through geological analysis, researchers have found that the previous magnetic field shift happened approximately 780,000 years ago. So, what will it mean? For one thing, all of our compasses will flip. The South Pole becomes the North Pole, and vice versa. Other than that, there will likely be very few major impacts on life as we know it. They can range from every 10,000 years to every 50 million years. We know that a flip is coming from measuring the strength of Earth's magnetic field over time, which is decreasing. One predictor of a flip. Put your grammar hat on because it's about to get a little technical. If you can remember back to grade school when the basics of English were being hammered home, you might have been told that no sentence can ever begin with a conjunction. And in case you need a refresher, a conjunction is something that connects phrases, words, or clauses like but, so, or and. While many people think it's a mistake to begin a sentence with these, it isn't. In fact, sometimes it's a recommended way to create emphasis. Despite being one of the greatest scientific minds, Sir Isaac Newton had some odd ideas about medicine. In his unpublished notes, Newton suggested that powdered toad vomit might help fight off the plague. His recipe? Suspend a toad by its legs over a chimney for 3 days until it vomits earth and insects. Then combine the powdered remains with other ingredients to create lozenges. According to Newton, wearing these lozenges around the affected area should draw out the poison and fend off the disease. This unusual theory surfaced in 2020 when a manuscript containing these notes was auctioned off for $81,000. Believe it or not, some people actually own and wear pieces of the meteorite that has been called the most dazzling otherworldly substance known. The Fukang meteorite was discovered in 2000. The rare palisite meteorite represents less than 0.2% of all known meteorites, and, unlike your usual dull space rock, has a breathtaking display of translucent green olivine crystals inside a gleaming nickel-iron matrix. It's gorgeous with a capital G. While the main mass of the Fukang meteorite is believed to be housed in museum collections, some smaller fragments can be found in private collections and gemstones. Melting glaciers are doing much more than raising the sea levels. They are so strong that in some places around the world these levels are dropping because the shape of the planet is changing. Melting ice sheets cause the shape of the mantle layer of the planet to become depressed, enough to push up land masses. When the Laurentide ice sheet melted tens of thousands of years ago, it left the Great Lakes in the US and lifted much of their surrounding area to a higher elevation. Speaking of lakes, did you know that there are a handful of exploding ones on Earth? One of them even caused 1,700 people to lose their lives. That's coming up at number 10. If you were to draw a raindrop, what shape would it be? More than likely, it would look like a teardrop. In the real world, they are much more spherical, while bigger ones can be compared to the shape of a hamburger bun. The image we're used to seeing in illustrations likely comes from the shape that these drops make when they make contact and drip down windows or other surfaces. Lee Hadwin is a very unique guy. His artistic talent only appears when he's asleep. As a child, Hadwin would scribble on the walls while sleepwalking. But things took a strange turn when, at 15, he started producing detailed drawings, including 3 small portraits of Marilyn Monroe, all while unconscious. What's even more remarkable is that Hadwin claims he has no artistic skill when he's awake. His sleep-created artwork has gained attention, with some of his pieces selling for thousands, even hundreds of thousands of dollars. Hadwin also uses his talent to give back, donating a portion of his sales to charities like Amnesty International. If you thought diamonds were expensive, well, you're in for a surprise. Hainite holds the Guinness World Record for both the rarest gemstone and mineral on Earth. A single crystal was discovered in Myanmar in 1951, and today we know of about 24 in existence. Its formation is a complex geological dance within specific volcanic rocks, but the necessary conditions are exceptionally rare. As you may have guessed, owning one is not for the average Joe, and prices range from $55,000 per carat and up, depending on size, color intensity, and clarity. If you look at the arrangement of land 1.3 billion years ago, there's not much recognizable. The continents that we know today as Europe, Asia, North America, South America, Africa, Australia, and Antarctica haven't been formed yet. Instead, they were joined as a supercontinent that geologists call Rodinia. What is now South China was at the northernmost part, while West Africa was at the southernmost tip, with a group of 11 different shaped sections more or less connected and bunched together. This landmass existed for 4.5 million years, and signs of it are still found today in places like the Keweenaw Rift in the United States and the Kalahari Craton in Africa. You ever get that feeling that people who listen to classical music think they're a little bit smarter than everyone else? There has been a persistent idea that something about this genre impacts intelligence, so much so that tests have been done exposing children to classical music to induce what's called the Mozart Effect. Apart from one largely debunked finding in the 90s, the overwhelming science is that there is no connection between listening to Mozart and increasing intelligence. Treadmills might be a popular fitness tool today, but they weren't originally designed for exercise. Back in 1818, they were invented to punish prisoners. In English prisons, inmates were forced to walk on them for hours, with up to 24 prisoners using a single machine at once. By 1822, treadmills had made their way into American prisons too. But over time, people began to question their value. The machines didn't teach prisoners useful skills, and they were dangerous. About one prisoner a week died from using them in England. By the late 1800s, treadmills had mostly disappeared. Then, in 1913, they reappeared in a new form, as exercise equipment. So, if you've ever felt tortured by a treadmill workout, that all makes sense now, doesn't it? The critically endangered Wami Pines lineage stretches back an incredible 200 million years. Take a good look at it. These were the trees that coexisted with dinosaurs. Today, 46 adult trees and 43 juveniles remain in the wild, but theirs isn't a story of complete loss. Once thought to be extinct, a small population was rediscovered in a remote Australian canyon in 1994. It was an extraordinary find for the botanical world. Today, these ancient trees are considered to be a global treasure, and conservation efforts are underway to propagate them in captivity to ensure their survival. All these amazing things about Earth, and we rarely have a chance to give it thanks. That's where the idea of Earth Day came from, which was first celebrated on April 22, 1970. It was a moment to acknowledge the environmental responsibility humans have to protect the planet. Across the world, over 200 million people participated in the day. In the US, the Environmental Protection Agency was created a few months later, an organization that continues to regulate business, individual, and government risks to the natural world. Earth Day is still celebrated each year, with people being encouraged to clean up rubbish, plant trees, and turn off lights to reduce energy use. Also, it was the day Animal Kingdom opened. 1998. I was only there a few weeks later. Without seasons, most of human life would be impossible. But how are they actually determined? One persistent idea is that it depends on how close the Earth is to the Sun. But this distance varies a very small amount, and certainly not enough to drive big enough changes like seasons. The answer is from the axial tilt of our planet, which is orbiting the Sun at a heavy angle. Whichever side is tilted towards the Sun gets more daylight and is hotter for that part of the year. Nobody likes thinking about sewage, but for some scientists, it's a gold mine. Literally. Sewage sludge, the leftover goop from treated storm runoff, toilet water, and industrial waste, contains more than just unwanted metals. In fact, it's packed with valuable ones too. Researchers found that the sludge from a city of 1 million people could hold between $8 and $13 million worth of metals. Beyond gold, samples from across the US also revealed silver, titanium, copper, and even rarer metals like palladium. So just how does all that treasure end up in the sewers? Thankfully, it's not from anything we eat. It mostly comes from industrial processes. Metals used in mining, electronics, jewelry making, and automotive manufacturing get washed away and settle in the sludge. Bear with me if you already know the history of the 1933 Gold Eagle. Minted in, 1933, this $20 gold coin was designed to stand out. However, the United States abandoned the gold standard later that year, and President Roosevelt ordered the melting of all the 1933 double eagles in circulation. As these things go, some of them disappeared, and they became the subject of ongoing intrigue. Today, only 2 legally reside at the Smithsonian, while any others are considered stolen government property. Their extreme rarity fuels their value. In 2021, one such coin shattered records, selling for a phenomenal $18.9 million, in the process becoming the most expensive coin ever sold, which is way more than the $20 it originally was. Just a bit more, a few dollars more if I had to wager a guess. Just a little bit. If you've ever been on a hike, you might have complained about why the world can't be full of easy, flat walks. It's a reasonable question. And the answer comes from what's happening deep below the surface. Processes that over millions of years have formed mountain ranges and hills that we see to this day. Tectonic plates are giant slabs of rock underneath Earth's crust, around 100 miles below the surface. That's about the distance from New York to Atlantic City, but straight down. When 2 of these continental plates crash into each other, they compress the rocks that reverberate and shoot up to the surface, creating mountains, just like pushing a piece of paper from either side and crumpling it. Chameleons have that magical ability to change the color of their skin to match wherever they are, right? Well, not exactly. Their skin doesn't actually change color. It works by a kind of cell on their skin called iridophores. When a chameleon gets stressed or excited, this layer of cells opens up, helping to reflect light that is colored orange, red, or yellow. This helps to discourage predators from attacking them, as bright colors are usually associated with danger. One of the world's most bizarre sporting events takes place in Wales every August, the World Bog Snorkeling Championships. Held in the Waenreid Bog near the town of Llanordod, Wales, the competition sees participants don snorkels and flippers to swim 2 lengths of a 60-yard trench through muddy bog water. But here's the twist. Traditional swimming strokes like front crawl or the breaststroke aren't allowed. Competitors must rely mainly on their flippers, though doggy paddle is acceptable. While some participants stick to wetsuits, others go all out with wacky costumes, from pantomime horses to giant grapes. The current record, set by Neil Rudder in 2023, is an impressive 1 minute and 12.34 seconds. The papal tiara, a distinctive 3-tiered headdress, also known as the Triple Crown, used to be worn by popes during official papal events. Unfortunately, during the French Revolution, anti-clerical sentiments, including those against the Catholic Church's power and influence, skyrocketed in France, and French troops stripped or destroyed many of the Holy See's papal tiaras. Only a few remained. Today, the last remaining tiaras can be found in museums, but they're rarely on display because of their irreplaceable cultural and historical significance. You don't have to travel into space to experience some of the material way out there beyond Earth's atmosphere. Over 5,000 tons of dust come down to Earth from space each year. This interplanetary dust carries with it water and other precious molecules that were crucial in Earth's history. The famous food pyramid gave everyone an easy way to think about diet. At the smallest section on top was sugar, meaning that this should be kept to a minimum. Then, at the base were foods like bread, cereal, and beans, telling us that a healthy diet involved eating more of these. There are many variations of the pyramid, but most have looked pretty similar, up until the last decade. The first problem is that not everyone's ideal diet is the same. And while less processed foods are a good general rule, other popular foods once considered healthy, like white bread, can be just as bad for you as sugar. The mirror test is a classic experiment used to determine whether animals can recognize themselves, showing a higher level of self-awareness. The idea is simple. A mark is placed on an animal's forehead. If the animal looks in a mirror, sees the mark, and touches its own forehead instead of the reflection, it means they recognize themselves. Only a few species, like some primates, elephants, and dolphins, have passed this test. In 2023, mice joined that exclusive group. Researchers placed white ink on the foreheads of black mice, and those familiar with mirrors spent extra time grooming their marked heads in front of their reflection. Interestingly enough, the behavior only occurred if the mice had experience with mirrors or had socialized with similar-looking mice. The Apollo 11 mission, for everyone who's not a space buff, was the first NASA mission to land astronauts on the moon and bring them safely back to Earth. To commemorate their fantastic feat, each astronaut, along with key NASA officials and dignitaries, received the Apollo 11 Robbins Medallion, which was made from sterling silver with the iconic Apollo 11 mission insignia on the front. As you can imagine, these medallions are incredibly exclusive and from part of a highly sought-after category of space memorabilia that is any collector's dream. Since they're very rare, they're usually only found in private collections or at auction and are rarely seen by the general public. Imagine you set out for a nice relaxing day on a lake and you're greeted by a scene out of an apocalyptic movie. Exploding lakes may sound like science fiction, but they can and do occur on Earth. Known as limnic eruptions, they result when high-pressure gas builds up in the lower depths of a lake. Add in a stream of carbon dioxide from a nearby volcano, and you have an explosive cocktail. That's what happened at Lake Nyos in 1986 when built-up carbon dioxide exploded through the air, killing over 1,700 people. Are you a visual learner or an oral learner? Or how about a physical learner? According to certain teaching theories, everyone has a specific learning style matched to how they process information. But there isn't actually much science to back this claim up. What evidence points to is that general and conventional teaching methods have the same success that catering to different styles does. We've all heard of seeing double, but have you ever heard of hearing double? The audio condition known as diplopsis causes a person to perceive sound differently in each ear. For instance, when a sound is made, one ear may hear the correct pitch, while the other ear perceives it as slightly higher or lower. For some, this unsettling effect fades with time. For others, it may be permanent. Causes can include ear infections, exposure to loud noises, or other damage. In some cases, though, it's the result of something more temporary, like a clogged sinus or a big buildup of earwax. These cases are usually easier to fix once the blockage is removed. Are you a pen aficionado? Well, if you are, please tell me, how much would you be willing to pay for one? The Mont Blanc 149 Meisterstück skeleton fountain pen is the pinnacle of craftsmanship and design, following a lineage that began in 1924 with the introduction of the Meisterstück series, which is German for masterpiece. And let me tell you, that's exactly what it is. With a price tag that goes into the thousands, the luxurious pen comes with a transparent resin barrel, which shows the pen's inner workings in perfect detail. Its skeletonized design showcases its piston-filling mechanism, which in normal speak is the system that ensures controlled ink flow, and the nib is made from 18-karat gold. Picture the longest mountain ranges. If what comes to mind are the Andes, the Rocky Mountains, or the Himalayas, then you would have picked some of the top over-water ranges. But what about underwater? The mid-ocean ridge is almost 10 times the length of the Andes, despite 90% of it being beneath the water, reaching average depths of 8,500 feet. It splits the Atlantic Ocean down to the North Pole, part of a network that covers most of the world's oceans. Like volcanoes and above-water mountains, this ridge was generated by the titanic forces of tectonic plates. Is there a more terrifying sight than a tornado ripping apart anything and everything in its path? Probably not. And that's why it's important to debunk myths about them. One of which is that tornadoes can't form in mountains because of the higher elevation. This is dangerously wrong. Tornadoes might be less likely to occur there because the air is more stable, but they certainly can and do form. So if you're running towards the mountain for cover, you are not completely safe. German Shepherd dogs played important roles during both world wars, but their name caused some controversy as Germany was the enemy. As a result, the breed's name underwent changes. In 1917, the American Kennel Club dropped German from the name entirely. Meanwhile, the British opted for the name Alsatian, referencing a region in France that had once been under German control. The breed's original name wasn't restored until 1977 when it officially returned to German Shepherd. So, what do you call them? The Victoria Cross pin is a miniature replica of the prestigious Victoria Cross Medal, the highest military honor bestowed for bravery in the United Kingdom and Commonwealth nations. Only 1,358 have been awarded since their inception in 1856. Pins like these are typically worn by Victoria Cross recipients or their families on formal occasions and acts as a miniature tribute to the recipient's act of heroism. Because of the profoundly personal significance of these pins and the fact that they frequently become heirlooms within recipient families, they're seldom seen in public. Except for mine, I've totally got it right here. There have been over 100 billion people who have ever lived. That might make you feel a little less special, but this was over hundreds of thousands of years, or millions if you go back to our species' ancestors. That sounds like a long time. However, stacked up against the history of Earth, it turns out it's just a tiny fraction. Less than 1%. We've definitely made our mark, though. 7. Earth is breathing. Just like the human body, our planet needs to regulate itself by breathing. It takes in carbon dioxide through forests in the ocean, turning it into oxygen. Another more explosive method is through volcanoes, which shoot out gases to regulate the climate. These gases eventually make their way back into the mantle layer of the Earth, ready to emerge to the surface once again. If you're watching this video as an American, you've likely heard about Betsy Ross sewing the very first American flag. Rather than verified history, though, this narrative might have been more the result of an effective family legend. It wasn't until the 1870s, when the country was almost 100 years old, that the grandson of Betsy Ross came forward with the claim. According to the family, Betsy Ross handmade the very first American flag in history and presented it to then General George Washington. Since then, Betsy has become the ideal patriotic figure. But historians have pointed out that there are no official documents that verify her as the first flag maker. Instead, a man named Francis Hopkinson is the only person on record having sent an invoice to Congress for what is described as the flag of the United States of America. Since I'm on the subject of dogs, did you know that in Beijing, street vendors sell dog testicles on a stick? It might sound shocking, but in traditional Chinese medicine, these unusual snacks are thought to promote kidney health. They are believed to be rich in qi, the body's vital energy. Dogs are also thought to have a strong connection to the kidney meridian, which helps regulate water and electrolyte balance. The Patek Philippe Henry Graves Super Complication isn't just a watch, it is a piece of watchmaking history. It was commissioned in 1925 by banker Henry Graves Jr. and held the title of the world's most complicated mechanical timepiece for more than 50 years. The one-of-a-kind pocket watch comes with an impressive 24 complications, which include a calendar, celestial map functionalities, and a minute repeater with Westminster chimes. Since there is only one in existence, our chances of seeing it outside of prestigious watch exhibitions are basically zero. Earth is a lot of things, and silent isn't one of them. For years, scientists have been picking up on a faint noise coming from somewhere on Earth. It seemed to be below the surface, but this was happening much more frequently than earthquakes. This sound was far below the frequency that humans can hear, though with seismic technology it can be detected. After decades of research, scientists found that this background noise of Earth was coming from waves making impacts with continents and the microseisms on the ocean floor. There hasn't been a more important invention for astronomy than the telescope. It's usually attributed to the Italian astronomer Galileo rather than a Dutchman named Hans Lippershey, whose patented telescope inspired Galileo to create his version a year later. Considering that the word telescope was also taken from one of Galileo's instruments, Hans Lippershey's name has been largely buried in scientific history. The waters around Southeast Asia, especially near Singapore, Malaysia, and Indonesia, are full of shipwrecks from World War II, when the Allies and Japan fought intense battles. One of the key battles was the Battle of the Java Sea, led by the Dutch on February 27, 1942. 14 ships were involved, but by the end, only 2 survived. In 2002, divers located the wrecks of these lost ships, but in 2016, 2 of the Dutch shipwrecks mysteriously disappeared, leaving only imprints on the seabed where they used to be. While illegal salvaging has been an issue in the area, experts say it's unlikely these massive ships were removed without anyone noticing, given the depth and equipment required. To this day, no one really knows what happened to them. Serendipite is a true gem in the mineral world. This exceptionally rare silicate mineral was first discovered in Sri Lanka in 1902. Named after the Old Arabic name for Sri Lanka, Serendip, its discovery was truly a stroke of serendipity. Its formation is very specific and only takes place in skarns, zones of altered rock associated with boron metasomatism, chemical alteration by boron-rich fluids of carbonate rocks intruded by granite, igneous rock. It's a mouthful, I know. Encountering serendipite, particularly in its faceted form for jewelry, is a rare privilege. The ocean is more than the source of mysterious noises. Currents in the ocean, deep under the surface, move water from a cool subsurface to a warm subsurface, a journey that moves through all major oceans and can take up to 1,000 years. Warmer water moves up from the equator and is cooled down and eventually frozen in the north of our planet, separating the salt from the water. That weight sinks other water down with it and restarts the circulation cycle. This system is known as the global conveyor belt, moving microorganisms and nutrients all over the world. In the rich history of the American Revolution, Paul Revere is at the center of a key moment. The image of him riding on horseback yelling, "The British are coming! The British are coming!" to alert colonist leaders comes from a famous poem by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. In that poem, Revere was riding by himself, but actually, there were 2 others with him. The warning allowed independence fighters to win their first battle against the British in Lexington and Concord in Massachusetts. When you think of libraries and archives, books and documents are part of the first things that come to mind. Libraries typically handle book lending, while archives focus on preserving historical records. However, some of these institutions hold items far more unusual than books and papers. Take Texas A&M's Cushing Memorial Library and Archives, for example. Among its collection are Ku Klux Klan robes and hoods, including those embroidered with the names of individuals tied to the university. One such figure is Dana X. Bible, who served as head football coach between 1917 and 1918, and again from 1919 to 1928. He also held the role of head basketball coach during most of that period. David Carlson, the library's dean, stresses that Texas A&M doesn't try to hide this part of its history. According to him, quote, "Mistakes of the past are things we can learn from. If we bury them, we lose the chance to grow from them. The Chateau Lafite Rothschild 1787 is one of the world's holy grails for wine collectors. This exceptional vintage secured its reputation as one of the finest ever produced. However, time has rendered it undrinkable. Due to its limited production and the passage of time, it is exceedingly rare to find a bottle of Chateau Lafite Rothschild 1787 today. Primarily held in private collections, these bottles can fetch hundreds of thousands of dollars. Just like the edges of a pizza, the outer layer of the Earth is known as the crust. However, there are two different kinds: the continental crust and the oceanic crust. As you probably guessed, the continental crust is the parts that we live on, ranging from the salt flats of Bolivia to the towering Himalayas. It's all differently formed crust. The second kind is the oceanic crust, found on the floor of the ocean, and it's much younger than the continental crust, about 270 million years old. On a planet that has parts over 1 billion, the oceanic crust is practically still a baby. Diamonds don't come from compressed coal. They actually date back much further than the coal we find underneath the Earth's surface. They're formed in the upper mantle layer, which has been shot up through explosive volcanic eruptions much deeper below. Coal, on the other hand, is found closer to the planet's surface, in between sedimentary rock basins. Diamonds can also be created through tectonic processes or even asteroid impacts. In 2022, police officers in Berthold, North Dakota accidentally donated a bag of cannabis to a local thrift store. The cannabis, which had been evidence from a recently closed case, was supposed to be destroyed. Instead, it was mistakenly packed with toys and clothes intended for the Dakota Boys and Girls Ranch, a Christian organization that runs 10 thrift stores in the area. Recreational cannabis is illegal in North Dakota, so when an employee sorting through the donations found the weed, they immediately contacted the Ward County Sheriff's Department. The Sheriff's Department secured the cannabis and returned it to the Berthold police, who made sure it was disposed of properly the second time. Did you know that the sand on some beaches looks like tiny little stars? I'm not kidding. Star sand is a real phenomenon made up of the microscopic exoskeletons of foraminifera, single-celled marine organisms. These microscopic organisms live on the ocean floor, and when they die, their calcium carbonate shells settle and accumulate over time. The result? Magical star-shaped sand. You probably didn't notice it, but November 15th, 2022 was a very special day. That was when, for the first time, Earth's population ticked past 8 billion people. And we're all going to probably have to make some space for plenty more in the coming years. Most predictions hold that by the end of this century, the world will be home to almost 10.5 billion. And I remember like 20 years ago when it clicked over 7. This idea stretches back more than 100 years, to when an anthropologist spent time researching the Inuit people in a region of Canada. But far from the dozens of words for snow that the myth often states, there are only 4. One refers to snow on the ground, another to when it's falling from the sky, a third to drifting snow, and a final one to snowdrift. The confusion seems to come from the way that Inuit words are formed by adding together other words, meaning that depending on what you're describing, there are technically dozens, if not hundreds of different words with the same base. For some people, COVID wasn't the worst thing that happened in 2019. One 54-year-old man from Massachusetts, who appeared healthy on the surface, he worked a demanding construction job, walked his dog regularly, and had no history of heart problems, died from eating too much black licorice. He'd always been a fan of red licorice, but at some point he switched and started eating as much as 2 large bags a day. One day in January 2019, while at a McDonald's, he suddenly started having full-body shakes and collapsed. First responders performed CPR and rushed him to the hospital, where he was put on a ventilator in the cardiac ICU. Sadly, he didn't make it. The culprit? Glyceric acid. The compound in black licorice can lower potassium levels and lead to heart failure. The man's excessive licorice habit caused a significant drop in his potassium, ultimately leading to cardiac arrest. Johann Gutenberg changed the course of history with the printing of the Gutenberg Bible in the mid-15th century. It was the first book to be printed with movable metal type, a printing method that removed the need to hand copy manuscripts. This, in turn, made knowledge more accessible to the public, which improved literacy rates and the spread of ideas throughout Europe. I mean, just think about that for a second. Can you imagine the world we would have lived in if this technique was never discovered? We would have been stuck in the Dark Ages. Although Gutenberg printed between 160 to 185 copies, only 49 complete or partial ones still exist today. Gutenberg Bibles cannot be found in every library or museum, but some prestigious institutions do have them, and they can be made available for public viewing under certain circumstances. Water is one of the most important components for life, not only for animals, but for the Earth itself. And this planet has quite a sophisticated way of distributing it. Apart from the evaporation that takes water up to the clouds, water is moved up from much deeper parts of the planet, down to the mantle through the tectonic plates, where it's soaked up by something called ringwoodite before it comes back up to the surface. This is an important mineral for holding water, and until 2014, scientists have only been able to synthesize it because it's usually inaccessible. But a small piece was discovered in a diamond in South America. Sometimes it's hard to think outside your own bubble, which is why so many people in the US struggle to comprehend how global the Great Depression was. It started in America, triggered by financial markets, but quickly spread worldwide, leading to recessions and hyperinflation across Europe, economic conditions which helped the rise of fascism. The European Alps are known for their stunning beauty, snowy peaks, busy ski resorts, and charming alpine towns. But beneath all that charm, the Alps have their fair share of odd and sometimes downright bizarre traditions. One such tradition is found in the Swiss region of Valais, where they hold the Combat de Reine, or Queen Fights, a cow fighting competition. Yes, cow fights. Farmers bring their strongest cows to battle it out, with plenty of betting and bragging rights on the line. The stakes are high, and the winners get to compete in the grand finals held every year at the Roman amphitheater in Martigny. The event runs from March to October outside of the busy ski season, and according to those in the know, it's a sight you really have to see to believe. With the title of the rarest plant on Earth once bestowed upon by the Guinness World Records, Penantia belliciana, or the Three Kings Kaikomako, clings to survival on an island off the coast of New Zealand. Rooted in solitude since its discovery in 1945, the loneliest tree in the world has stood watch on the island for over 7 decades. Luckily, conservation efforts are underway. Scientists hope to bring this species back from the edge through various programs that include propagation and reintroduction. Despite feeling that the world is coming to an end, the Earth likely has a long life ahead of it. It's predicted that in 1.3 billion years, all life on the planet will be virtually impossible. But that won't be the end of it. The final moments of the Earth won't come for another 4.5 billion years when it's pulled into the collapsing sun. Aside from raiding and pillaging, the Vikings had a rich culture. Their command of the seas was based on their knowledge of navigation and exploration. And in their homeland, rather than the British cartoon depiction of Vikings, people were more likely fashionably dressed in silk with well-groomed beards. Their society produced art, literature, and stories that survive until today, like Ragnarok. In 2016, a group of psychologists set out to answer that very question. They wanted to identify traits that make people seem unsettling or weird. To get a better idea, they interviewed 1,342 volunteers and asked them what gives them the creeps when meeting a stranger. Some of the results were surprising. Sure, people felt creeped out when there was a sense of physical danger or when the person in question was a clown or looked disheveled. But there were some more unexpected findings too. People who collect dolls, insects, or reptiles made the list, as did bird watchers. Other behaviors like laughing at odd times, smiling in a strange way, or frequently licking your lips also set off red flags for participants. The study confirmed that creepiness isn't just about fear, it's also about anything that feels off or out of place. Before we had digital cameras and sophisticated space telescopes, astronomers had to use tools like the heliograph to get their heavenly fix. It was essentially nothing more than a large telescope and a camera on a tracking mount, but it was one that could take stunning cosmic pictures. In 1862, Warren de la Rue took a very particular picture with his heliograph, and in the process revealed the sun's previously unseen corona, the beautiful, wispy outer atmosphere. It was a game changer. The corona's discovery provided scientists with valuable information about the sun's structure, temperature, and atmosphere. Today, the original is housed in the National Science and Media Museum archives and cannot be viewed by the public due to its age and fragility. Despite feeling that the world is coming to an end, the Earth likely has a long life ahead of it. It's predicted that in 1.3 billion years, all life on the planet will be virtually impossible. But that won't be the end of it. The final moments of the Earth won't come for another 4.5 billion years when it's pulled into the collapsing sun.